Hello everyone, we are ready for chapter 52 of The Treasure Hunter's Tale. That evening the old friends sat around the kitchen table and finally opened the reward money envelope. It was a large amount, enough to build onto the church building or even buy a bigger one. "I think we should expand the building," said Mrs. Beloved of the King, "for we love the old thing and it was provided by the King, as was the money to extend it." And so they got to work discussing plans for expansion. Mr. Save-by-Grace and Ears to Hear went back to the old lodging house they used to frequent, discussing their plans, for they were keen to get back to treasure hunting once they were fit again. Johnny and his parents went back to their old home, which they had boarded up when they left for their journey on the King's Road, but they knew Johnny would be off again soon with Set Free and Sure Hope once Sure Hope was better. Hope wrote a note of invitation to her new friend Lucy, and it was sent the next morning, inviting her to the wedding, which was to be a combined celebration of thanksgiving for the victory won and for the union of her brother and his beloved, Miss Be of Good Courage. Iron was so full of stories of his adventures that he could not wait to get up the next morning and go and visit all the old and poorly people to tell them all about it. There was lots to do before the wedding celebration, and the whole town was bustling. The baker immediately started making the wedding cake, which was his and his wife's gift to the new couple, and Mrs. My Weakness is His Strength started designing a lovely bouquet with all Miss Be of Good Courage's favourite flowers that were in season. Freddie walked through the town to visit his uncle Save-by-Grace, for he wanted to discuss something of great import with him and Ears to Hear. He knocked on the door and waited for a response. "Come in," said a voice, and as he opened the door, there was Ears to Hear, smiling at him. "We were just on our way to find you, Freddie," he said. "Come in, man, and hear our plan," he said, gesturing to the sofa, where Mr. Save-by-Grace was already sitting. He had a large map on his lap, which had lots of markings on it. "Planning our next hunt," he said, looking up at Freddie and patting the cushion next to him. Freddie sat down. "Well, brother," began Ears to Hear, "we were wondering whether you would like to come on this one." Freddie looked rather surprised. "You have remembered it is my wedding day in less than a week?" he asked, raising his eyebrows. "Hush, man," said Mr. Save-by-Grace. "Of course, and we wouldn't miss it for the world, or have you be late." He smiled ruefully at Freddie. "No, we were thinking of a little hunt back at the Dragon's Cave." Freddie looked at the sparkle in his uncle's eye. "Would you be okay with that, Uncle?" he said. "I mean, going back there." Mr. Save-by-Grace smiled. "Yes, Freddie. For the purpose we are proposing, I would." "You see, I reckon there was treasure in that cave that the dragon had stolen," said Ears to Hear. "I have already spoken with Set Free, and he says dragons like shiny things, a bit like magpies, and so there is bound to be some treasure up there." "And we were thinking," broke in Mr. Save-by-Grace, "that there might be something you could make into a ring for your good lady." He smiled encouragingly. Freddie laughed. "Well, I'll be," he said. "Great minds think alike. For I was coming to visit you both to find if you had anything I could buy off you that might work for a wedding band." "Well, that settles it then," smiled his uncle. "We'll go right away if you're ready." Freddie got up. "Thank you. I'd better go and say goodbye to everyone first," he said solemnly. "Just in case." He walked off home. As he was walking home, he remembered the treasure chest from the pirate ship. He wondered what was inside and made a mental note to remind his father about it when he said goodbye. Miss Be of Good Courage gave Freddie a long hug goodbye. "Please be safe," she said, "and don't take any unnecessary risks." Freddie hadn't told her what the expedition was for, as he wanted to surprise her, but he promised he wouldn't do anything dangerous, unless he had to. This did not give the young lady much peace, but she saw he was already set on going, and so spent the rest of the day praying for his safety. Miss Wait-on-the-Lord was a great blessing to her in those days leading up to the wedding, and became like a mother to her. Freddie set off with his companions. Mr. Save-by-Grace, who was riding in a cart, was planning to go with them, but not into the cave, as his ankle was still a little sore, and he didn't want to damage it. He knew that this would mean that he would have longer to sit outside of the cave, which meant he would be looking at the place where his beloved brother fell for a good deal of time, but he felt ready for it. Freddie was very touched by this kind and loving gesture and prayed that they would have a successful day's hunting. They arrived quickly at the cave, so much were they in conversation about the past few days and the wedding plans. They decided to go up the cliff this time, as they could tell that the cave was not inhabited, and so they didn't need to be quick, but instead could take their time climbing up. It was good to be in that spot again, even though it brought back many painful memories, especially when they came to the spot where the dragon fell with dear Mr. Discover the Truth. There were now flowers growing in the spot, for it had been many years past. The three friends stopped at that spot for a moment of quiet reflection. The flowers bobbed their colourful heads in the summer breeze. They reminded the friends that their brother was happy and joyful in heaven, away from pain and suffering, and they rejoiced for the truth that they would one day see him again. Freddie bade farewell to his uncle, then he and Ears to Hear started climbing the cliff once more. As Freddie was climbing, he remembered the stalactite and prayed that they would find treasure in the first part of the cave, as he really did not fancy going under that thing again. Ears to Hear, who was a little way ahead of Freddie as the wayfinder, looked down, smiling ruefully at his friend. "You're thinking about that stalactite again, aren't you?" he said. "A bit," confessed Freddie. "Well, don't worry," said Ears to Hear. "That thing will have joined with the ground by now, so there would be no getting past it even if we wanted to. And anyway," he said, taking another step up the rock face, "Set Free said if there was treasure, it would be where the dragon was. And don't forget, that brute only used the front part of the cave." Freddie whistled a sigh of relief. "I'd forgotten that," he said. "And another thing," said Ears to Hear. "Surehope told me that dragon fire kind of neutralizes harmful gases, so we won't need those awful breathing masks this time." "You sure?" asked Freddie. "Well, I would say the cave certainly got enough dragon fire last time we were here, wouldn't you?" said his friend. Both men shuddered as the awful memory of that day came back to them. "Yes," said Freddie firmly, "definitely." "Well then," said Ears to Hear, "up we go." It surprised Freddie how much easier it was to climb the cliff, and then he realised the last time he had climbed it he had been but a lad. Now, with his strong muscles and manful stamina, they were up at the mouth of the cave in no time and hardly breathless. "Oh, I must say that was easier than last time," smiled Ears to Hear. "Indeed," agreed Freddie, "much." They went into the cave. The walls were still black from the scorching they had received, but were more faded now. "Right," said Ears to Hear, handing Freddie a torchlight. "Now we hunt," he said, and the two men got to work.